This week, we're lounging in the cesspool of karmic crimes. Did John Wilkes Booth karmically pay for killing Abraham Lincoln? Did the Menendez brothers kill their parents in defense or for the money? Scott and I are going to dive into that psychically, all and more with LOL.
I don't just talk stuff and repeat stuff. I'm living this stuff.
And you can thank me for covering your astro. Scott's getting a trip out of himself. Welcome to Leading Out Loud, the sun in the deep waters of Scorpio and the collective high tides of emotions. The news of President-elect Donald Trump has disrupted people's sense of safety, and a full moon on the horizon promises to divide maybe us once and for all. And last week, LA attorney George Gascon proposed an early release for Lyall and Eric Menendez for the conviction of their brutal shotgun mafia-style murders of their parents, Jose and Marie Louise Kitty Menendez. Scott and I will talk in depth about this today. But first, Scott, let's go into our psychic surf report. You know, buddy, it's no secret that after the election this week in the United States, where President Trump has re-entered his role as president-elect, the energy in the country has gone south for the most part for the winter. However, I mark this as not just Scorpio. It's also not just political. It's also Scorpio. I got that backwards. Yeah. So in essence, let's talk about sort of the planets going on right now. Scorpio, first of all, energetically is a time of divide, period. It's where we are dividing, we're separating, sort of like separating, you know, I'm thinking of like a larva separating from its sac. Like we leave behind, the shed snakes its skin, sheds its skin, excuse me. The snake sheds its skin. I think I'm doing everything in opposites here. And this is a time where we ultimately do have some sort of a line drawn. I feel like regardless of the presidency, we would feel this opposition going on. And I would say, first of all, the energy this week is, although, you know, tumultuous from the election, I would say expected with Scorpio. What have you picked up, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, expected is kind of what I like to say in situations like this. I mean, it's kind of a repetition, but I think that people might be more cognizant of like, this is just repeating the same cycle that we're doing. We're going to have to do something different. So I do think this time will force people into a different modality of thinking, less making excuses, less putting blame, and just kind of be more responsible for making change, or at least seeing things differently, you know.
Is that what you're seeing with your clients, that people are seeing things differently? Because I'm seeing nothing but people really in sadness and remorse. You know, it's almost like that whole Hillary Clinton lost 2016 all over again. You're seeing videos on X and Twitter, people crying, and liberals, some young liberals freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm not laughing at them. I'm just like the intensity of going on camera.
I am because I think that this is first world problems, you know, because we have so many other things. We're not getting shot. We're not getting bombed, right? So these are things that we can trek through if we remain strong. So I think it's an overreaction of and sort. If you compare ourselves to what other people are going through, as far as like they don't know if they're going to have their next meal, they don't know if they're going to be alive tomorrow. So we need to kind of take a little chill pill and relax and look at things what they are, so we can rebuild and move forward. So I have a lot of clients that you know, maybe we all, I guess, attract clients that resonate with our modality. A lot of my clients are kind of beyond the political sphere, not really part of the right or left divide. That's what I teach. I'm kind of looking at the system for what it is. So I think a lot of people are more trepidatious, you know, because of the climate. And so, as you and I, Christopher, talked before, is that I feel like these two paths lead to the same destination, whether it's Trump or Kamala. It's all leading to the same destination ultimately, because we're part of the divine and the divine purpose. So,
and what destination is that?
Destination hell.
Well, that's what people are feeling. I mean, they feel like it's going to be hell.
No, it's not. You and I talked about this before, Christopher. We don't believe that we're signed up for Armageddon, right? So there are things that we have to collectively evolve from, and so this divisiveness is actually helping the collective to see what divides are and how to mend it back together. So if we don't understand that, well, then things will keep breaking down more so until we get it. But I'm more optimistic of the future. I feel like people will in time understand and get that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a couple of perspectives. One, you know, I was talking to someone in my private life who's very respected. She's a wonderful woman. She plays it fair. She's in the legal system also. We'll talk more about the Menendez later. But Her greatest wound is that she says she's felt this sadness, this incredible sadness and despair. And I said, honestly, I feel like this. I feel like there's a group of people in this country who were caught under communist regime in past life, maybe part of
Yep.
the Mao movement, in China, maybe part of, the Russian Revolution. And I feel like all those people had traumas and they are projecting their traumas on Biden because there's this big fear that we're going back to communism. And I
Right.
feel like that group of people had to expunge their fears. Now I think with Trump being elected, all the people who've been under a dictator, a Mussolini, a Hitler, a Mount, what's the word? The Hun, Attila the Hun, like all these types of huge, horrible. I feel like Trump is bringing up all their trauma for release
Right.
now, where
Sure.
they have to see their past projected onto their present. And so,
Exactly.
regardless of the politics, I feel like this is this is a necessary evil, if you will, in the
100%.
sense that people have got to face their fears over
Yes.
totalitarianism.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, if you look at the left right sides and what people are saying on the far right, a very fear of diversity and fear of things abstract from what they're used to. Like there needs to be an evolution from that too. I think like especially me being gay, of course, having to fight for gay rights as younger years, now it's just like, oh, they're so sick of hearing gay. Fine, have your pride, have your thing. So, in time these things do resolve as long as we understand and we get comfortable with these things. So I get annoyed with these things being flashed in our face all the time, but I have to remind myself that's what makes it normal. That's what brings normality, where people's like, all right, I'm used to it. Let's move on. Right. So I think in time, that's the kind of destination that we just kind of let's move on and focus on more, I would say, issues that are more detrimental to our survival and the planet's survival, not so much these social issues that have been ongoing for so long.
I agree. I psychically feel too. I mean, I have felt all along. I don't know if you're on the same page. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I feel like the United States is the new Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of what the karma we're facing are Atlanteans, where there were dark Atlanteans that rode that damn continent down. And there were light Atlanteans who were trying to keep the earth at high vibration. And so I
Right.
feel like there's a second ancient karmic thing going on here as
Right.
well, which we're all afraid. If you wrote Atlantis down, which I actually didn't, I got off at the last minute. So did you, from what I understand. We
Yeah.
actually did together, actually,
Yes.
from what I'm understanding. Not in the same boat, but we ended up in the same land. I feel like, there's this other fear. All of us have this fear, regardless of Mussolini or communism.
Right.
All of us have this fear of losing the world, losing the country. Do you pick up
Right.
on that psychically too?
I mean, yeah, but honestly, Christopher, beyond all that is this selfish energy. Everyone's really trying to prove and find their own point. I think that's why it's so divisive. No one's really looking collectively, So I think that once this becomes the emphasis that and people start waking up to feel like, I'm really not letting people speak their minds. I'm not letting people live and let be, right? People really coming from more selfish perspective, especially those I see breaking down and they're in their own, privileged state to be able to break down about mundane issues. And so not to say they're not important, they're important issues, but we have to look collectively what's going to help the planet for survival. Because that's if that meteor is coming, are we thinking about marriage rights or abortion rights? Again, they're important, but we're not thinking about those things. So when we broaden perspective about survival, we start there, then we can be more, I would say, unified and then working through those divisive issues. We're kind of doing it backwards, in my opinion.
I see that, but I, from a practitioner who helps people heal, feel like this is all inside of you. Like
Yeah,
for
of course.
instance, I
100%.
wasn't I haven't been happy with the presidency my whole life, actually.
Right.
Yeah, to be honest with you, like I was looking
Fine.
back,
Yeah.
like I liked Jimmy Carter as a kid. I mean, like I liked Jimmy. I thought he was a pretty cool guy as a Libra. So I've never felt like it was going to affect me personally. Like my karma, like I don't care if this became a totalitarian state. I
Right.
feel like I'd find a retreat in the mountains. I feel like I would be spared. That's a
Yeah.
psychic knowing of faith inside me of creating my own reality and knowing I'll be okay. So I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of this is that people have not faced their own shadow,
That's
which
right.
is these fears of the past, these fears of life, these fears of their dominating Menendez father, if you will. We'll talk about that soon.
Right.
And so they're projecting this onto the public or onto the national scope when really that's not where the work is. The
Right.
work is the fact that you're running around scared all day instead of
Right.
running around in your heart and online.
Right. Well, I like that someone said here, like people in Gaza don't know if they're going to eat, like I was saying before. Some people know if the bomb is going to knock them out. We're focused on such trivial issues in retrospect that, yeah, that
Right.
creates a lot more unnecessary fear. And we should be looking more individualized now. This way we don't put it in the collective or we don't dump it on each other and resolve those things. So yeah, I 100% agree that this is all the shadow versions of self manifest, because to me, that's evidence that we're in a collective shift and a collective expansion. That's to me, this is all positive in my perspective, because it's like when you move that refrigerator in an old home, the cockroaches come scurrying out.
Dude,
Well,
not in
that's
my house.
happening. Not well in the old house, I said. Unless you
Oh,
have an old
okay.
house.
Okay.
Right. But the cockroaches, that's happening in the mind. You're moving belief structures, so all this like contamination in the mind will start resurfacing, and you have to purge it right now. But we have to be conscious that we're not dumping it on other people, because we're in different perspectives of that, and that's what
Well,
people
I
are doing
think,
now.
yeah, I feel we have ignorantly allowed the media to manipulate us into blaming each other when the issue is
Right.
not each other at all. I mean, when I see people in the grocery store, they're pissed, but they're not
Right.
being mean to me, right?
Right.
Like,
Me.
I don't see it. I don't see people being mean to each other. I feel like that's a
No.
narrative that's been driven by Soros and other people to get us to go into a civil war, and I don't think that's going to happen. Frankly, good fucking
No.
luck. It's not going to happen.
No.
But I also feel a bigger thing here, and we'll talk about this over the coming season.
Yeah.
Which I love RFK. I'll say the one thing I like about this whole thing is that RFK is being empowered by Trump. I love that. Okay. Regardless, because he's already said he's going to go after pharmaceutical commercials on television.
Right.
He's going to go after the infiltration of corporations into our public
Right.
agencies. He's going to go
Right.
after clean water, all these types of things. He's going to go
Right.
after removing fluoride from the water. Have you heard that?
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, whew, so it's like, it's weird. You might get a troll in the White House if you want to call it that, but there's a
Hmm.
silver lining there, I think, of some spiritual good that are going to happen. My point is, I feel the evil really, and this will unfold, is corporate America.
Absolutely.
I feel like corporate America has gone too far. The American Constitution had a mistake. It did not speak to the power of corporations, and corporations, especially with recent rulings, have way too much power over our citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the industrial complex. I mean, everything's all about, global interests and corporate interests. And, I always say that our puppeteers, the presidents, are just, they're funded by the feds. I mean, it's all a big corporation. So a lot of this is just really the big bankers manipulating, controlling everything. So I always say it's two sides of the same coin. And so I see people being divisive. I'm like, that's created to be that way. And so it's created that you'll find issues that you'll never see eye to eye on to keep it, dividing and conquer mentality. So we have to understand the system. Right. We have to understand how the system operates so we don't become a privy to it and also misled. And like you said before, so many people or whatever they're watching, they're just like being telephoned what they're watching. It's like a repetitive, brainwash of what they've been told and reading. So it's important now, especially in Scorpio season, that we become objective and start challenging things right now in our perspectives. So I think that'll help see people, have people see through. And again, for those who are devastated about this election, we've been here before. So this is not your first rodeo. We survived 4, we'll survive another 4. But the change is how we respond to it,
I agree. The change is always how you respond to it. The change is always how you respond in the moment to yourself.
Right.
I will say this. I don't feel there's a lot of people talking about how it's not going to be safe for women. It's not going to be safe for abortions. It's not going to be safe for races. It's not going to be safe. I disagree.
I
don't
disagree
feel that-
too. I'm
I
gay.
feel that the system, if anything that the first term showed us is that the system will not take shit, right?
Right.
And if there's
Right.
anything after that election was that the system will not take shit. I don't feel this country will allow these types of
No,
horrible
absolutely
crossings
not.
or beatings or anything anymore. I think we've become zero tolerant. I think that the whole world is watching. I think social media is also watch guarding. So I just want to say, no, I don't feel anyone is unsafe here, except maybe aliens who crossed over the border. I mean, not just new, gray aliens, but I feel like,
I thought you meant the
illegals who
grays.
crossed over the border,
Right.
I feel like I'd be worried if I was a person who crossed over the border illegally during the last 4 years. That's the one thing I think
Yeah.
would maybe be not safe. But even I wouldn't say unsafe. The United States honestly puts you on a 747, flies you back home. Not first class, but coach.
Right.
I don't feel like we are not. In fact, we have so many rights for people who aren't even citizens.
Right.
which I think is very caring. Name another country in the world
Right.
that's like that.
A lot of stuff is just to me just propaganda to put people in fear again. Because again, there are women in Congress and Senate making laws. There are women, in governors, mayors. I mean, there's women working in government everywhere. There's gay people working government everywhere, and we're finding more and more that the anti-gay laws are created by gay people. We've
Oh
been
my
seeing a lot of
God.
it right now.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have to understand there's African Americans, there's Latin Americans in government too working. So we can't start saying we're losing our rights, such a general blanket statement, because that's not what's happening here.
No.
Again, it's all these micro little, things like abortion and all these other issues in gay marriage and stuff that isn't detrimental to our survival. It's important to discuss, but we have to ask ourselves, how far are we really taking this? Because we do have the rights to make change. And I agree with you, Christopher. This country, I know a lot of people who voted Republican or voted, conservative, who are pro gay rights. So
Me
people have just
too.
been lumping people in. You vote Republican, you're anti-gay. It's like, no, I have a huge family that are conservative, that are all for gay rights and so forth. And so I know some liberals that are anti-gay marriage. And so it's not so black and white. We got to be more objective than that
I
to
agree.
see.
I see someone here has written, and they don't have a name here. Mary Ice says RFK will not be allowed to make any serious changes. The corporate donors will raise hell with the administration, and Orange Man
True.
will stop RFK from doing anything.
I
All
agree.
right, that's an interesting negative perspective.
But,
Certainly
but I,
hopeless, not hopeful. I disagree. I respectfully disagree. I'd like to make a professional bet. Mary, I'll bet you $100 that's not
bet
true.
me, bet me.
Okay, I'll bet you, buddy, $100 that's not true. I do think there'll be resistance. I do, but I don't think we're going to let it go down. I don't feel
Well,
like,
well, no.
I mean,
Let,
if
let me
RFK is closed down by, like, let's say Walmart in some town, I'm gonna be so anti-Walmart at this point. I'm gonna be on the side of this justice personally, whatever it happens to be, and I'm gonna fight for that. I'm just glad someone cares.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is yes, I love his voice, and so he's been a great voice because I'm all about the health industry and food industry. Those are major
Me
things
too.
in our lives we need, right? So, but for me, I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of pushback. I believe both Kamala and also Trump are just part of the system, and so they're there because they need to be there, and so they can only they're just the puppets, like I said before. So I mean, maybe certain changes will be made on lower levels and so forth, but on the global level, it's going to be take a hard fight. And so I'm glad that RFJ is actually doing something to bring the voice to that. So to me, that's a starting point. But I'm just sensing psychically he's going to meet with a lot of opposition.
I
A
agree.
lot. You
Well,
know,
yeah, and that opposition is corporate.
exactly. The
It's
bankers,
money.
the
Yeah,
feds.
totally. But we're going to be on it. We can't talk about this all day, but I do want to talk
Right.
about where the energy is going forward in the upcoming week. We're going to be actually moving through. So over the weekend, we make commitments about what's in and what's out of our life. At least you do know who is president, so you can make some of those. I had wrongly predicted that the election would play out for weeks. I was wrong. I admit that fault there. But over the next week, we get very passionate about our vision of the future, Scott. And next Friday, the 15th, which is we'll have our
Mm,
show on the 14th, but we have a full moon in Taurus, which ultimately is the ultimate divide. And
mm,
I feel like there will be, to some degree, a division. The world will divide to some degree in two camps for a while
right.
until two camps start to realize that we have a destiny that's greater and higher. I
Right.
personally think so. Energetically, it's going to be a kind of a bumpy, emotional week. What do you pick up psychically going forward in this upcoming week?
Well, despite what we just talked about, because that's a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
Looking from an individual point of view with everybody, I think there's gonna be a lot of I'm hearing, questioning oneself. So that was something that just came to mind or came to my inspiration of thinking about that moving forward. Second, questioning yourself, second guessing yourself, and I think that's a positive thing. It's kind of what I was saying in the beginning about like looking at things that you believed in and ask yourself, do you really believe in those things? So really challenging belief structure, I think, will be coming up a lot this week moving forward. So it seems like to be emotionally charged, right? I would not make heavy decisions this week ahead because you might make it from a faulty place of logic that might do a disservice to you. So make sure moving forward you're just taking a step back, be more objective. I would recommend this all the time, but it's important this time because there's going to be so much chaos around us, like we've mentioned before, that you might be making decisions out of impulse that could be a disservice to you. So take a step back, reanalyze your decisions, it's okay to question yourself.
I second that. I think with all the step numbers from step 20 to step 23 next week, it means it's all about passion. It's all about your feelings, which means you need to know how you feel.
Right.
Because when you feel through something versus think through something, you're creeping into awareness in areas that your mind would escape, ignore,
Right.
So
Shut
I
down.
agree with
Yeah.
you. Really feel into it before you drop any hammer. And still got like a couple weeks before things actually happen. Pluto moves into Aquarius on November 19th. That's, I think, when the new reality begins. And
Agreed.
so, use your feelings to decipher very subtly.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. And by the way,
Back on
folks,
track with Pluto
what's
and
that? I'm
Aquarius.
sorry.
Back on track with Pluto and Aquarius. We're back on track.
Yeah, well, okay. We'll see how comfortable that on track is as we watch Scott in live reality facing
Yes.
Pluto climbing up his degrees.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's our psychic surf report. That was cool. We're going to be talking about the Menendez brothers and murder, but first I have just a little shameless promo for myself. I have a webinar coming up this Saturday called Pluto's Last Stand. It's an online webinar where I will assist you through this workshop. You bring your chart, it's Zoom, and I walk you through how to analyze your natal Pluto. Like, what were you here to protect in your life? Where are the holes? Where is energy leaking? Where are you failing to be conscious to yourself? This is an online workshop. It's about an hour and a half. And then we're going to talk about where Pluto is right now at step 29 Capricorn before it goes into Aquarius. And we're going to talk about precisely showing up what that lesson is over the last 15 years. So if you want to be part of this webinar, there are tickets available. I think all the VIP questions are sold out, but come on down to senseiChristopher.com or click on this QR code here and join us for a great workshop this Saturday.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we should show up your Pluto, man.
Yeah.
Where is
Jesus.
that?
Do you mind if I just reply to a comment here really quickly?
Yeah,
Do you
dive
mind
in.
if I just
Of
do it for a
course, why
second?
not?
Just
Yeah, go
someone
ahead.
says, just to kind of to close what you're saying. Someone says, Mark Deck says, if gay people are allowed, then creation stops. God will judge God, said man and woman. Soon everyone will be gay for self-gratification. See, this is the ignorance I think people have about, I would say how creation is very diverse. So that's what homophobia is. I'm afraid gay people are going to take over the world. Straight people haven't taken over the world. Any sort of race hasn't taken over the world. So it's impossible that gay people will start taking over the world. It's just an anomaly of nature. So I think ignorant comments like that creates more division in the name of religion, in the name of God. So we need to be careful with such statements like that because it's not true. That's just that's actually what literal homophobia is right there. So I just wanted to address that. Homophobia
Okay.
is that I'm afraid of gay people taking over. That's just not realistic. Creation
The
is more
truth of
diverse.
that is, honestly, sir, you're probably afraid of gay taking over you. But
Right.
that's okay. That's not how it works. I think over the evolution of humankind,
ignorant.
here's the thing. Procreation is part of like spawning the population, but you've been
Sure.
incarnating over and over again in heterosexual relationships. You get bored. Okay. The soul wants to try variety. And so that's part of what happens in evolution.
I just say it's nature's population control. Some women or men are not able to have children either. What does that mean, right? So nature knows how to balance it out. God knows how to create balance. So if you think there's some sort of judgment for the God created balance, there's a little irrationale in the mind there.
Yeah, totally. And also here, we'll use this. We'll do gay as a topic coming up because
We'll do.
honestly, no, we should because people just don't
Adam, get the
understand it.
rainbows.
I'll tell you, 60% of the time when I have a gay client, they are between gender lifetimes. You can't just go from woman to man in one lifetime. You have too much memory of the past life gender. So most of the time, gay is an in-between of genders. And that's all we can talk about right now, I think. But it's
We'll get
more
into that later,
complex than
but yeah.
people realize. All right, so let's shift to today's hot topic, brother. Today we're
Hot
diving into
topic.
the hot topic, not hot pocket. Let's not give away
Right.
to Pillsbury. Yeah. Today we are diving into recently resurrected conflict over the sentencing of Lyall and Eric Menendez in California. It's all been incited by LA District Attorney George Gascon, suggesting new evidence could reduce their sentence. Rather than me summarize this, Scott, let's just roll a news clip that ran recently on Southern California's KCAL. Can we roll that, Adam?
Roll it.
Pat Harvey. We begin with today's historic decision in the Menendez case. The LA County District Attorney recommending that Eric and Lyall Menendez be resentenced for the killings of their parents in Beverly Hills in 1989. KCAL's Rachel Kim has the story from downtown LA.
They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society.
Just over a week after family members of Eric and Lyall Menendez pushed for the brothers' release from prison, LA County District Attorney George Gascon announced he is recommending that a judge resentence the brothers decades after they were convicted of killing their parents. Gascon is asking for a resentencing to life with the possibility of parole, which would normally mean 50 years to life in prison. But he says because the crimes happened when the brothers were under 26 years old, under California law, they would be eligible for parole immediately.
It really focuses not necessarily on what the original crimes were, but it focuses on, has the person been rehabilitated, number one, and number two, can they be released safely into the community?
Some of the brothers' family members were there for the announcement. They believe if the brothers' case was heard today with the current understanding about sexual abuse and PTSD, their sentencing would have been very different. They say the brothers deserve freedom and a second chance.
This step gives us all hope that the truth will finally be heard and that Lyall and Eric can begin to heal from the trauma of their past.
56-year-old Lyall Menendez and 53-year-old Eric Menendez are in state prison without the possibility of parole after being convicted of killing their parents, Jose and Kitty, with a shotgun in their Beverly Hills mansion more than 35 years ago. Prosecutors maintained that Eric and Lyall were motivated by greed, but the brothers have always claimed they killed out of self-defense after enduring a lifetime of sexual, physical, and emotional abuse by their father, enabled by their mother. Gascon recently announced that his office is reviewing new evidence to determine whether the brothers should be serving life sentences. The new evidence includes a letter allegedly written by Eric to his cousin 8 months before the killings, describing the abuse. Also, a new witness. A former member of the boy band Menudo claims he was sexually abused by Jose Menendez at the family's home. Kitty.
Wow. Okay. So, in fairness here to the opposition, the Menendez, LA District Attorney George Gascon actually was running for re-election. They said his advertising coffers were dry. They said that a press conference was like an easy grab for attention. They said that he was just exploiting the Menendez brothers. He's now been replaced. He lost the election, for the record. But this wasn't the only kind of buzz, Scott. Recently, Kim Kardashian advocated for the imprisoned Menendez brothers to be released, saying, quote, "They are not monsters." Well, thanks, Kardashian, for going in there and doing that for us.
Right? I mean,
and this is even further inflamed by a recent Netflix documentary, a docudrama that in 8 episodes reenacts the gruesome murders and dives into the secrets of the boys from many perspectives. Now, I actually have binge watched the entire series since Monday, but let's roll a clip if we can, Adam, just a little bit of that trailer of what Netflix is putting out there.
If anyone had written this for a script in Hollywood, the Hollywood people would have gone, no way.
The Menendez case is one of the most infamous criminal trials in America. The brothers accused of the murder of their wealthy parents in Beverly Hills.
It was like an incredible soap opera.
Jose was a successful businessman. Kitty was the caring mother. 2 boys, emblematic of wealth and privilege. Why would you kill your parents?
As the prosecutor, I knew it was plain old greed.
It was a media spectacle from the beginning. So we were not the ones who told the story of our life. We looked like the perfect family, but behind the walls, something very wrong was happening.
What did he do to you?
I'm sorry.
Now there's the TikTok movement to free the Menendez.
There's a new generation that supports the brothers.
People are looking at the case with fresh eyes.
2 kids don't commit this crime for money. And there's people that believe I shouldn't spend the rest of my life in prison.
That judge was determined he was going to get a conviction.
These kids went through some horrible things. I'm telling you now, it's all fake. And if you don't know it's fake, that pisses me off.
There is no evidence saying they're not guilty.
We would much rather lose the murder trial than talk about the 6 secrets of the family.
Wow, okay, pretty intense there. Now, I watched the whole thing, Scott, and so in today's discussion, first we want to hone in psychically on this particular case because it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
In the evidence they proposed, because the documentary or docudrama kind of shows you all sorts of different ways, but they start off talking about how the Menendez brothers were the first, thing was that they were sexually abused by their father. First, the older brother, Lyall, then the next one, Eric. So listen to your psychic guides as I'm telling you the story. And, all sorts of objects inserted into them. Very, very graphic. I think Netflix does a good job of putting me in the seat of that, abused person. Like, it was uncomfortable, but,
Yeah.
And they talk about how the boys were literally afraid for their lives, that they literally thought that their parents were going to try to kill them. And that if they didn't have shotguns and things ready to kill first, they would be killed. So there's that whole topic. But then as the documentary goes on, it starts to talk about, no, these boys made this up. They read books about this. One of the, Eric Menendez wrote a whole screenplay a year prior about killing his parents, a kid killing his parents for the money. So he literally wrote the script for the murders a year before. They went off and bought Rolex watches and Porsches and all sorts of high, started spending the estate money very quickly. So there's a lot of evidence that points to, no, this is premeditated. Neither of them ever had a job. One had a job one time as a Domino's delivery guy for one time. So they were definitely lazy, privileged, unmotivated children who were spoiled. No question about it. But then again, there were things in the documentary that talked about how their cousin at age 8 told their cousin at age 8, "Daddy's touching me." Like, there's a lot of ancillary family stories that it was happening. Coaches saw the abuse of the boys. All of the educators and coaches and things that helped these boys all said the boys were exemplary and the father was a creep. So there's a lot of evidence in that direction as well. And there's also evidence that the attorney that represented them, who's a high-power attorney, was just, this is her MO anyways when it comes to defense. She'd just gotten someone else off on a similar defense motive. However, as it turns out, and this is not spoiling the end, they get a mistrial in the first trial. There's hung jury. And in the second trial, they can't use that same evidence. And Lyall is such a fucking idiot, pardon my French. He dictates all the truth to this woman on the phone. So by the time the second trial happens, there is basically all this audio evidence of how he's talking about how he can cry on cue and how he should have been more level-headed that night and things like that. So sort of undermining all the evidence. So you just walk away going, I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to feel. I'm not sure what it is. So, I've set this up. What do you psychically pick up on all this? First of all, let's start piece by piece. Do you feel psychically the boys were sexually abused by Mr. Menendez?
Yes, I do feel that. And I was trying to remotely go back to the place, right? And I do see, it feels like the mother was enabling this too, but it wasn't just them.
That's in the documentary. She was aware.
I haven't watched this because I feel like the mother is very, the enabler on this.
Yeah, almost a co-conspirator. Yeah.
But what I'm also showing too is that, and I'm surprised that they haven't mentioned this unless they're saving this or unless the family has connections with other very important people, I feel like, so they can only say so much too. And I feel like there has been other issues with the father making them molest other children too. So I feel like they were forced into doing it themselves too, and being witness to this. Right. So there's a lot of that rage, right, of being forced to do something against their will, both on the receiving side and also the doing side of things too. So it's a lot deep. And so I don't know if they want to mention that or if there's some other connections the family has too. And so, and a lot of this, I think that with the parents too, there's a lot of other financial connections they've had too within, other molesting of children and so forth. So it seems like it wasn't just them actually either.
Well, that's kind of interesting because, a lot of the rumors in Hollywood right now is there's a lot of child trafficking. It's uncertain how Menendez made all of his money. So you're almost picking up this was part of maybe a bigger ring or something.
It's a bigger ring. Yeah. It's because I was getting a cult religion energy in that sense, so that would make sense if it's kind of a other type of group of people, and I think that who's the eldest brother, what's his name? I just pick up
now Lyall did admit to sexually abusing his little brother after his father abused him, so there was definitely an incestual abuse.
He seems the most angry to me, right? And so I feel like
okay, good call. Yes, in at least in the movie he was depicted that way.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen that, but he feels almost angry to me, and I feel like that he's the one that really felt trapped in the circumstance, and I feel like he was kind of leading his younger brother as far as to try to get away, and so he feels like more the initiator, of even with going through with the murder too, and so there was a lot of hatred, there's a lot of fear, a lot of being surrounded, like being locked in a almost feeling trapped energy, right? And so, and again, because every time I go back to try to go back to remotely view the crime and what mode they were in, I just feel like this disgust for the father, and also almost an anger for the mother. Like, you let this happen. You allow this you didn't stop this energy, right? So I really do feel it's true, and they're both spoiled brats too. So I definitely pick up on the spoiled brat energy, but that doesn't negate from the experiences they've had either. So it is very more complex, and there's a lot more to picture than just the abuse that they've experienced.
Well, the movie did depict just that, the series. I mean, it talked about how the mother was basically addicted to pills and alcohol. She was addicted to Menendez, the husband. She was she's just one of these codependents to a narcissist that you always see, right? Where she, was blaming their children for in the show, she's blaming her children for her misery and whatnot. And she says a couple times, and according to the boys, she fully well knew. She walked by that bathroom. She knew what's going on. And she was complicit, and they were angry. They said in the movie that they were putting her out of her misery.
Interesting. I mean, that could be the reason of saying that, but I think that in a sense, it's like their own. The eldest still feels just like a psychopath to me, though, too.
Well, that's how they came across, that he was a sociopath. Yeah.
He definitely feels like a sociopath. So like the combination is just not good. So to me, like all the above is true. And so I think that a normal person in the situation, especially me being a product of sexual abuse, family member, not my parents, make the record clear, that I didn't think to kill them, right? But people respond to trauma differently. But I think that most people either try to run away, or I say the common thing, people try to hurt themselves in a sense. But I think there has to be some sort of psychopathic energy to want to murder someone that brutally, even if they've gone through some amount of trauma. So I think that initially with the eldest, there is that narcissistic psychopathic energy still within him. So, but again, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Even looking at the pictures on the video of the mother and father, like they look normal, right? And they look pretty normal, but like my psychic view beyond that just feels very vindictive, very, good with presentation, but like really dirty behind the scenes. So the pictures could be very deceiving because they look all charming and look so innocent, but it's like I can see through that saying it's not true. A lot of kind of that culty energy I get,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, and and some are commenting here, this is a dark topic. Yes, we're going into the dark here in Scorpio because it's the only time you can look at it with a little distance and a little boundary. And it brings up to a larger point we're going to talk about, which is just the karma of crimes. But I want to move on a little bit. I'll just say astrologically, Lyall Menendez is a step 19 Capricorn. This is the sociopath you're speaking of with a moon in Taurus. Definitely a sociopath then. Just kidding.
Interesting.
I'm a Taurus. I'm just kidding. But Saturn in Aries, like a lot of like control issues, but Mars at 0 degrees Pisces. Now, Mars at 0 means no boundaries around violence.
Right. Interesting.
So certainly lacking that to begin with. I mean, I feel like we choose our parents. We'll talk about that in a moment. Eric apparently was gay regardless. Do you pick that up? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I have to say, I relate to this scenario a little bit.
I know. That's one of the reasons why I want to bring it up. It's kind of
perfect. Yes, I relate to this scenario a little bit, being the younger brother, and but I was gay anyways. But even so I can relate to that, without saying specifically. So I can say yes because it hits home to me in that way.
Yeah, it feels like so. Like he had a lot of shame. They say, why didn't they talk to their therapist about this? Well, Eric had a lot of shame of letting down his parents for being gay. Apparently, they caught him and his friend being lovers. They caught him, back in the 80s when you can listen into the phone conversation, their parents had listened in. He's a 5-degree Sagittarius, so he's very young at believing in himself. And it conjuncts Neptune at 0. Neptune 0 also has potential for woohoo when it comes to boundary structure. Here's the irony, though. Eric's Pluto's at 29 Virgo.
Wow.
And what that means is Pluto at 29 Virgo is trining Pluto at 29 Capricorn, and this is when they get a possible reduced sentence. That's kind of interesting from an astrological perspective. But both boys, it's interesting. They're very tied karmically because Lyall Saturn is on Eric's Chiron, and it's very clear in the series they were lovers.
Interesting.
They were lovers. Yeah.
Interesting. I feel though, the eldest is Eric, right? Is that the eldest? Who's the
No,
that's the
Lyall,
eldest?
the
Well,
sociopath.
Lyall. Sorry, yeah, because I don't know this too well. Lyall for me would be, I would say, dangerous to society. I would still say that though.
Okay, that's a
I still
question that
get,
came up there in the chat.
yeah, I get very I've reservation about him. The youngest, no, the youngest one feels like has a pure heart. I feel like Lyall is still dealing with previous karma too. You
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
I heard genocide, so perhaps also
Really?
was a victim of genocide, or actually was a creator of genocide in a previous incarnation. So he's carrying this genocidal energy into this incarnation, meets a father energy, and now is also becoming sociopathic from that experience. So he's carrying a lot of that energy. So I feel very trepidatious about Lyall, in a sense, unless he resolves that karma spiritually. I don't think it's intentionally malicious, but I think if he's unconscious of that karma, he could be a detriment to himself, you know.
No, he's one of those. No, I could see him easily being like someone that experimented on Jewish in concentration camps or something that now
Right.
is paying the price. I feel like we'll get into this, but I'll just, premie this. I feel like a lot of times when you get away with it in a past life, you reincarnate where you don't get away with it,
Exactly.
So we'll talk about that. But I'll tell you this, the homicidal maniac is definitely in his chart, although it looks like it's tied to religion. Do you pick up on that it might have been like killing the pagans and starting a long time ago?
It's interesting you said that, because remember I said before I felt like cult energy surrounding with the family and stuff.
Ah,
You know what I
okay.
mean?
Yeah,
So I
because
think
Lyell's
that's
chart shows that, like a lot of cult past life Christianity,
yeah.
overbearing Christian authority.
Yeah, because I feel from the parents in that sense of that energy. You know what I mean? And so I think that was another trigger for him. You know,
Uh-huh.
like, let's be clear here too. Like I don't see the sexual abuse lasting into their teenage years. Though. It feels like just when it was a younger age, right? And then things kind of cleared up for a while, and then he carried that on for a long time. You know what I mean? So that's to me where the psychopathic energy comes in. It's not like it kept going until their teenagers. It stopped at a younger age, but then it never got addressed. And then it was just kind of a normal family, culty family. They had connections with other things, and so so to me, that's where I feel like even if it's been that much time without having abuse, and they decided to kill the parents at that time, that seems a little, like again, psychopathic.
Well, that exposes them as liars because in the series, anyways, and in court, they claim that Eric had sex with his father a week earlier as a teenager, and that and so that it was ongoing into their teenagehood. So
No,
you're
that's
saying psycho,
embellished.
you don't pick that up.
That's embellished. Yeah, they did. Just like I said, there's a lot of truth and a lot of over exaggerated stuff. Because just think of this, Christopher. Did you freeze? Okay, think of this: that a teenager, if you have it in you to kill your parent, you're not going to fight back and having sex with your father at that age as a teenager.
I didn't believe that. I was like, then he's
Yeah.
enjoying it. No offense, but it's like,
Yeah,
at that
no,
point, it's twisted into something to where, and to any teenagers getting abused, I'm not saying you enjoy it. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But
okay,
there was
Oprah.
clearly so much rage.
Yeah.
There was clearly so much rage going on as a child. I found it really hard to believe that as a young man who has a car and wealth and all these things, that he would tolerate a father at 17 or 18 taking him in the shower. Just seemed hard to believe.
Yeah, that's how I feel with that too. It just feels like they over embellished it to prove a point, of something that really did happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I'm feeling like there's a lot of that stuff. I feel a lot has been just add-ons, for to make a case. But at the same
Win.
time, you think more is that moral, because at the same time it's like something has been horrifically done to them still. So is it immoral if you're just like fudging the truth? I'm like, to me, I personally think it's not good to fudge the truth and just stay to what is true. But I feel that part of it's just kind of made up and over embellished.
So there's a part of the series where, there's a big theme to the series that, Mr. Menendez, he was Cuban American, he was a fighter. He was always trying to toughen up the boys,
Right.
Picking on them, calling them different names and things like that. And, the boys suggested in the show that their father would have been proud of them for killing him because although they had been losers their whole life, at least they finally took into their hands their own power. So I'm curious, can you tune in to the Menendez Up in Heaven? Are they willing to come forward here and give us a little insight? I guess the first obvious question is Mr. Menendez proud of his sons for killing him?
Let me see if there's karma involved on this. The first thing I heard was you get what you pay for. So that's interesting. I don't know. That's interesting. So I think that for the father, that is definitely a karmic punishment.
Oh,
You know,
really? He had it coming.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a karmic punishment. So I wouldn't say proud. It's almost like, well, this is there's a previous incarnation with the father and the sons too. I really feel that father energy connects with that genocidal energy from a previous incarnation too, right? This is just a reoccurrence from a past incarnation, including the mother, actually, because the mother is kind of saying there was also the mother had a dictator energy from a previous incarnation with them. So this is very complex spiritually from a previous incarnation.
That's interesting
So
because in the movie, Mr. Menendez is so anti Cuba and what's his name, Castro. He's like super anti Castro, super anti Castro.
interesting.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
I
like maybe
think the
he's seeing
mother.
himself as Castro in a past life, like he was a
The
Castro.
Interesting. Well, the mother also feels like he had to be a dictator in the previous lifetime as a male. So the mother feels like a male energy in a previous incarnation as a dictator energy.
Okay.
So when I heard "get what you pay for," like the father is a very illusionary person. So like he can present himself a certain way, but there's a completely different energy behind it. So there is a
Yeah.
double facade with the father. The mother is just like stone cold. Stone cold. So this is, I would say, karma on the fathers, and this is karma too, but it's karmic also for the brothers as well. So they're trying to actually heal karma from that previous incarnation, whatever genocide energy I'm feeling that they were all connected to. They're trying to pay each other back in a sense karmically, but also trying to heal and move on from that too. So they
Interesting.
all are connected from this in this previous incarnation. So, but they're not really stepping forward to me because I don't think they even want to discuss it like this. But I can definitely get a sense of the vibe around it. And their positionings, especially from their previous incarnations, actually.
So
So
you're saying they're both part of that. So it's like Mussolini and Hitler reincarnated as husband and wife in America?
right, and this, if you want to simplify, in that
Yeah,
sense.
something crazy like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, because
It
I also feel like Lyall's also had a dictator or a role energy, but was forced to be a part of his genocidal energy, but it was also out of his control too. And so I feel like that's where the mother and father come in this incarnation. There's a connection with that same energy he's carried. Now I think the brother, Eric, I think his name is, right.
the younger.
I feel like the younger brother's going along for the ride in a sense. I don't feel like younger brother feels fresh to these three in this incarnation.
Yeah, I
He
see in the
feels,
movie it comes across that way too. He's like a sweet lamb, even
but
though he
just, yeah,
did
so
dark stuff.
indifferent.
Yeah.
Right, so indifferent. And so his theme is persuasion. So I think he's been battling the karmic theme of persuasion, actually. And I think that he's been misled before, the younger brother, with other cult energies, and I'm hearing ritualistic abuse in previous incarnations, the younger brother too. So I think he's been quite privy to this type of persuasion through dark forces, that I think it's time for him to start splitting himself off and recognizing that even if that means at this point from his brother. And so that may or may not occur in this lifetime. I think at some point there may be an opportunity where he feels like he needs to disconnect and pull away from his brother and not be persuaded, influenced by him any longer.
Yeah, there's
And
a
that might
lot of
come
talk
soon.
about Spartans and how Spartans had sex and they were connected and they were, bonded as warriors. So there's a lot of talk about that in the show, which is kind of interesting as well. So
Interesting. I'll have to
I
watch
definitely
it.
pick up. But Eric's chart does show that he ultimately is trying to really draw the thousand shades of gray of where the moral line is. So I concur. I think he's cutting himself out of this karmic loop. Kind of, it also feels psychically in my third eye that he sort of tagged onto this family more so than direct karma with them. I definitely feel Lyall, his mother, and his father have direct karma too. So I'll affirm all those things as well.
Yeah.
Well, this brings us on to a whole larger topic, Scott, just about karmic crimes. But first, one more little promotion by me.
Yay.
Let's hook. And this is the White Light Friday sale coming up on Sirius Joy on Friday, November 29th. We are resetting all the clocks on Sirius Joy. What does that mean? If you've been a subscriber to Sirius Joy before, we initially allowed you to sign up for $3.99. And then after you sign up, we go straight to $20 when you come back. We're erasing all of that. So we're resetting all the clocks in Sirius Joy. We'd like you to come check out the new site, the new digs, and we're offering a special deal starting on White Light Friday. I'm not doing this Black Friday bullshit. It's a White Light Friday on Sirius Joy, Friday, November 29th. We will give you the introductory rate of $3.99 a month for 2 consecutive months. So we'll give you 60 days to try the service and how amazing it is. I'll tease that there's some very important people coming to the site soon. But that said, Yep, very important VIP on the highest scale. But it's an opportunity. And here's the thing. If you don't want it yourself, this makes a great freaking gift for your family for basically $8, 60 days of therapy and also support. You'll find out more. I'm just teasing it right now, but it'll be live on White Light Friday. That's the 29th. Okay. Nice. So on to today's final topic, karmic crimes. You know, it begs the question, buddy, like John Wilkes Booth, he killed, Abraham Lincoln, Hitler. Genghis Khan has his DNA in most of Europe. Okay, right. So what do you feel generically is the karma of crimes like this? Is there karma?
Well, I mean, karma is memory, right? And I would say it's memory from previous incarnations of our evolution, right? The soul. And then, of course, and I describe what karma is before we get into that. But there's also karma, unlearned lessons, and unresolved. So there's so many different variables of that, right? And so there's certain circumstances where I see karmic revenge, where maybe there were a couple. We'll just create a scenario where a couple and maybe the husband murders the wife, and that's that. And so they reincarnate, and that wife comes back to handle the karma, right? And so in this way, she can understand what it's like to murder and to be that aggressor, and understands the mindset, so she can completely release that spiritually. And sometimes we do incarnate into these very dark, negative experiences to understand what that mentality or that experience is, so we can properly evolve. And so there's a lot of people who are overly empathetic, too empathetic in this world, because they probably were very unempathetic in their previous lifetime. So now everything makes them sad. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh my God, that's horrible, because you were very unempathetic. Now you're learning empathy, but it's too much, right? When we understand these things happen because there's a cycle and there's an evolution attached to our individual lives and collectively, then you start recognizing why the karma is what it is. It wouldn't be so judgmental, and that we are here to gain power and for our soul to grow. It's the power we're seeking, and we get more power when we understand more of those experiences. Right? We have more of that broader perspective, like the God energy. So yeah, sometimes people incarnate. Now, say someone like the genocidal maniac, homicidal maniac, Hitler.
Like Edgar Case. Okay, Hitler, yeah. Edgar Case. I was thinking of John
Hitler.
Gacy. I can't remember the 90s, but go ahead.
Right. Now, he will there's different snares that can come with that energy. One, he can incarnate and be sex trafficked as a child and be tortured his whole life, right? That could be one experience.
Oh, that's a good point right there. Not to say, so there you go. I mean, whoo, boy, did you open up a painful can of worms there. But it's true. Like, why do you end up being tortured for so long? Maybe you tortured.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And so a lot of people look, and I tell people all the time, when you look at what's going on in the world and why these poor children, experiencing what they're experiencing, and they say, what if that child that you looked at is actually Hitler reincarnated? Oh, good, he deserves it. See how the tone changes when we think that way?
Yeah,
immediately. So, but that's how life is structured. That's why the God and Creator allows these cycles to happen, because they need be. We chose it. We created these cycles for growth. So it could either be that, or there could be where in order to balance this planet out, or planet Earth, that there needs to be an equal sense of negativity and density. And so we also don't know the karmic paths of the Jewish people that experience and how they're evolved from the experience. It's so complex.
It is. Right? It's per person. So let's just do an example of, so we talk about the Holocaust, how horrible it was. Agreed.
Awful.
Never should use science to kill. Never should kill.
Ever.
Aside from that, totally dark and horrible. However, we're talking about millions of people.
Yep.
So, for instance, let's talk about the Spartans. Let's talk about these Greek armies that came in, raped, pillaged, burned villages. We're talking about armies of people who raped, pillaged, and burned people's lives down. They're going to come back and suffer, and maybe in a group setting, right? Like, again, I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm saying it's a structure like that. Or let's put it this way. If you were innocent, completely had no karma in that situation, let's say in Hitler or any other Genghis Khan's victims. I mean, we go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about these victims. Yep. If you were innocent in the next life, I don't know if you'd be in a position to pull the trigger. You'd be in the position where you have to be on the side of the perpetrator.
You might have to. You're right. You might have to. But, I always say different level of sentience. It depends on the responsibility. Right. So we look at a child, if they accidentally killed somebody or stabbed someone, we're not going to put them in prison. Like, they didn't know better. They were 4 years old. They just, you know what I mean? So there's a different level of consequence. So there's even within our spiritual evolutions, those are maybe a different level of sentience who are at war. And I would say, especially in the primitive times, would they reap karma because they killed each other because of land? That was was the territory, that was the experience. So it really depends on the level of sentience and what you know. And that reminds me of Yeshua's statement, forgive them for they not know what they do, because at a different level of sentience, when you know better, then you experience more of those consequences. That's part of the growth too. So
How much you know better ahead of time, right?
that's right. That's right. And
Inside
so
yourself.
if some people were born into a very negative conditional environment because part of their evolution, and they're responding based on the conditional environments, the karma may not be as major as someone who already has experienced that and know better too. So you have to think of those variables, right, with the karma.
Right. Well, let's talk about something a little option like karma of wars, like Osama bin Laden being killed by Obama. So here you have a president that was duly elected by the people to protect the United States. He goes after a war bandit that goes back to Bush's. That's not even his bad guy. He inherits the bad guy. He goes ahead and pulls the trigger to have Osama killed, when really it was the Bushes that set him up. He was a CIA operative. Our country actually gave him all the guns in Afghanistan. That's complicated. So what about a situation like Obama? Is Obama going to pay a price when he sat in a position where he had no choice, it seemed like? Like, it seems like had he not taken the shot, there would be also, at least conservative outrage.
Right.
What about something like that?
This is how I see it. It's like going to an MMA fight and saying the person who won the fight gets karma. These people are all laying in the same bed. They're all signed up for the same fight. So it's, whoever wins, whoever loses, loses. So in situations like that, and depending on how much they've affected innocent people in the process.
Oh,
but again, no one's really innocent depending on the karmic structure, if you think of that terminology. But it really depends on what they're here to experience. So, again, if it's just an agreed fight, like an MMA fight, and one loses, well, you signed up for that. It's a battle of who has the most power in that sense. But I think when it starts affecting things in a negative sense, that's where the karma of lesson, they need to reincarnate to understand that too, but also to get out of that power hungry, war hungry modality too. They'll have to learn that karma as well. So I think that, when it comes to even Obama, I think that, if you have a job to do, there's certain aspects of that karma that might be, he might put in a different position. Not so much he gets murdered, but understand what it's like to have someone be affected by a decision that a politician makes. You know what I'm saying? So it might be a little different type of karmic experience he'll have to experience. Because a lot of these politicians may think that they're doing the right thing if they're not completely, associated to that global industrial complex. But I think that sometimes they just do what they think is the best, and it might not be the best. So their karmic experience after might be slight than what you think. You might just feel, again, the loss of a family member because of a politician or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we can't get into this now, but I think about families of karma, like the Bushes. So, Bush Sr., was it Prescott? I can't remember. But Bush Sr. Ultimately, rises in CIA. Many people say he was responsible for President Reagan's assassination attempt. Then he himself goes after, in the Kuwait, goes after Saddam Hussein, not good. And but then his son finishes the job after 9/11, which was allegedly an inside job. So it's just and then suddenly we're going after weapons of mass destruction. And then suddenly we have Osama bin Laden, not Osama bin Laden, but we have Saddam Hussein's head on a pike. Wow. Like that is after, Iraqis that are killed, Kuwaitis that are killed, Americans that are still in PTSD. Holy shit, the Bushes. We'll have to do a whole episode on them. I think there's some interesting karma crimes there, friend.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people need to not be afraid of karma. Like exactly, the sexual abuse I experienced, like similar to like what happened with the Menendez brothers in a sense. Like, it never goes away, but I respond to it differently. Like I've allowed myself to broaden my perspective and have more of that self-empowerment to where it's not affecting me any longer. It's a notch on my belt now. And that's one thing when we take this karma, we embrace it, stop running away from it like it's a punishment, then we end up like really being proud that we've actually experienced it. Because how we evolved from it.
A horror house here in the theme park of humans and Earth. So, Scott, we both have channels. In case people don't catch us on the LOL channel, tell us where you can be found 7 days a week, especially tonight, Thursday night, your premiere show.
That's right. I do my live shows every Thursday night. So tonight's topic is called Collective Destiny. So it's kind of will be similar, but a little additional about predetermined destinies and energies. So tonight on my YouTube channel, scottcruzpm.com is my website for if you want to book a one-on-one session. And my live show, they're saying I didn't say the time in my mind. It's 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And come have fun with us. There's a great community of people in there as well.
Excellent. And as you probably all know, I'm on Sirius Joy TV. I have a weekly show called Namaste Today Live, which goes over the astrology of the week, and then a special Astral Mingle interview with guess who? Talk about nepotism. It is actually Scott Cruz, my guest tomorrow night. Scott Cruz will be on again. If you haven't had enough of them, you'll have more. We're going to be talking about actually Mars and Leo. And if you know this, buddy, we're going to talk about Mars and Leo and what that means for all 12 signs.
Yes.
As we go on sort of an ego self-love hiatus.
Right.
The last 6 weeks into February. So we'll be talking about that, diving for all 12 signs. By the way, Namaste Today Live goes live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on the on Sirius Joy TV on YouTube. All right. Excellent.
Well, kind of if everyone enjoyed and we did Summer of Love, it would kind of be like a version of that in a sense, just with the retrograde.
Totally. We're going to pick up from there. And those, by the way, those horoscopes did amazing. Like 15, 20,000 people watched that over the course of the year. So it's been pretty good. Yeah. Good job. Nice. All right. Well, we're at time, man. It's always fun talking to you, brothers. Like a no-brainer, lots of fun. We thank you for watching. And remember, folks, don't put up with that shift show. Lead out loud. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Whew. That was a tough one. You think it was too dark, man?
It was dark, but I think people need to hear about that. A lot of people question those things, you know. So dark would be fun.
It was definitely a shell game because we didn't have to talk about the president very much. We could just talk about something darker and deeper.
Right. Something we can control, actually. The karma.
Yeah.
We can control this.
I'm glad, though.
But yeah, I think it's good topics.
Yeah. I like what people